Hello and welcome to the Chaos. I'm Fetch, and with me today is Ganesh. We're doing an interview. Ganesh is the victor of our October charity event. So, Ganesh, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm Ganesh. I have been playing Magic for, I think, 8 years by now. Haven't really done any tournaments or anything like that. I did play a little bit of CDH for about a year, 1 year ago, maybe less. And at the time, I played Orvar. I also played a lot of budget commander events where your commander had to be $100 or less. So I got a lot of deck building experience with those events. It was a lot of fun. And then I just didn't really play any CDH for a while because my store I went to had closed down. So I took about a year where I just didn't really play, something like that. After that, I started coming back because I just wanted to play some more. And I played some Orvar, and it just kind of felt outclassed. So I switched to Blue Farm, just because, one, it seemed good, and two, it did actually fit a lot of things I like to do in Magic. I'm definitely a control player. I also do like comboing in general. So it kind of checked those boxes. I'm not really much of a tempo player, which Blue Farm can be a very heavy tempo list, but I learned. So yeah, I'd been playing about Blue Farm for about a month or two, and my first tournament was Ka0s 5 or 6 or something, and I came in second at that tournament, which surprised me, to say the least. And after that, I played a few other tournaments. I ended up winning our store championship. And I've done a few I've ranked pretty high in some other tournaments. I think I top 8 the last Ka0s event. And then this one, I won. So that's my journey so far.
Yeah, I've seen you around. You talking about your performance history. I've seen you in quite a few Chaos events and consistently bringing this Blue Farm list up to the top. If not top 16, then very close to it.
Yeah, definitely. I do like playing the deck a lot. It's become my favorite deck for sure.
When you're talking about how Blue Farm for you, you've taken a more control-y route. What are some both gameplay choices and deck building choices that you have made to lean into that style?
I'm not sure that I would say my list is more control focused. I meant more like Blue Farm is a control. It's kind of like in a control shell, but then a lot of decks are. My deck slants heavily towards the mid range. So you'll see pieces in there that are like Professional Facebreaker is a great example. It's a piece that's definitely not turbo, but also definitely not super mega value like Talion is. It just kind of lands straight in that in between to where it can kind of make you mana if you want it. It can kind of make you draw cards if you need it. I actually had to change my playstyle quite a bit learning Blue Farm because it's just so different from what I was playing before, which is Orvar, which is just full control, right? It's a counterbalance list. So Blue Farm is very different. You have to be much more proactive on the board. You don't just kind of sit there and wait most of the time for other people to do things. You have to be you have to interact a lot and make a lot of decisions all the time with that deck. Have a board presence.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I know a lot of people who talk about Blue Farm as if it's just straight up a turbo list, but with how I've seen you play this deck and with how you're talking about it now, it's very clear that it's much more than that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can take this deck. I'm sure people have good success with turbo. especially because most people aren't on the turbo variants. So when people see Timna Crom, they assume this is going to be they'll probably have a little bit more time, and they surprise them with like a culling written to Adnaz very quickly. Um, I am of the mindset that I don't need to be that fast, because like culling the weak is like actually a great example of a card I don't run, that a turbo list would. So culling the weak is a black sorcery that you sack a creature, you get 4 mana. This is great, excellent, amazing if you're trying to go for an early Adnaz, which many of these turbo lists are trying to mulligan for. But it's terrible if you really care about your creatures. So, like, my thinking going into that is, if I play Culling Writ and I try to Adnaz and my Adnaz gets countered, I'm down 3 cards. Like, I'm down my creature, I'm down my Culling Writ, and I'm down my Adnaz. So, my list has evolved over time. It initially started, I think, as more of a turbo list because I looked at like the only blue farm primer, like the biggest one, and I was like, okay, I'll start it. And then over time, I've been changing it more and more.
Makes sense. And you've definitely taken this and made it your iconic list.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. I had a heavier slant on humans. Because I had looked at Koval's list and I had come up with some of the reasons independently from him, and I agreed with some of his stuff. But one of the takeouts for me was Containment Priest, and I swapped that out with Fairy Mastermind just because Containment Priest doesn't really advance your board state, whereas or your game plan, I should say, whereas Fairy Mastermind kind of does, and it's Thoracle protection. So, I mean, these are all flex spots, so it really just, like, you can play a lot of whatever you want in Blue Farm and still do decently. So it really just comes down to personal preference.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you are still on that Cavern of Souls as a way to, one, get your humans out protected. Yes. I know that like Ranger Captain and Grand Abolisher are huge things for that. But I'm sure it's also a more flexible piece as well in certain situations.
Yeah, I can't say I've done a Thoracle with it yet. But that's certainly something that's very scary. Timna Uncounterable, Draenith, yeah, definitely the Grand Abolisher effects, Facebreaker. Oppo Agent 2, like, it actually hits a lot in my list, and it hit even more before I changed it. Oh, Esper also, actually, I think is a human. Let me look.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's a good card. There will be games where you'll draw Cavern of Souls, and it'll pseudo-lose you the game because it's a colorless land. But my list is much slower, I think, than a lot of people's, so it's okay. It's the risk I take.
So we've talked about some of your history as a Magic player and history with this deck, obviously. But what got you into Magic?
I was a Hearthstone player.
Me too.
Yes. Back in the glory days, yeah, I used to play back. I think it was after Naxxramas. It was when Dr. Boom was like a huge thing, right? So, yeah, that's where I came from. And then I eventually tried Magic. I didn't really have too much interest in like the 60 card formats, but I did enjoy Draft a lot. Like, Draft was super fun. I really liked deck building. And then I started playing Commander. I really liked Commander. And then later I started doing these, build your Commander deck challenges at my LGS. And I think those skills definitely transferred to deck building in CDH overall. So yeah, I think those definitely helped.
Yeah. I mean, it's shown that you're a very good pilot, obviously winning here, but you talked about how you've gotten top 16 in multiple other events and second place in the first tournament that you came and played with us. So
yeah, I was definitely surprised.
Once again, huge congratulations for your performance. Any tips that you have for people who want to pick up this list?
For people that want to play Blue Farm, in general, I would say the deck has a medium skill floor. Like, it takes a little bit to learn. but the skill ceiling on it is very high. Just because like you have, for two reasons. So like one, you have so many options, and so many different game plans you can go for. It's actually very difficult some of the time to figure out what is the best one. Like if you compare it, the game plan of Blue Farm, or like the gameplay of Blue Farm, to a lot of the other decks, it's very different. Like if you compare it to Atraxa, it's like you resolve Atraxa and you're good. You compare it to Tivit, you resolve Tivit and you're good. You can compare it to Kinnan, you play Kinnan and you're good. Like, I mean, not to say those decks don't have their own like nuances, but like, Blue Farm is different. Like everything, it feels like you're walking like a very tight, like a tightrope. Like if you're prone to make like minor mistakes, it's not the deck for you. Because like everything is so delicate. Like Simian Spirit Guide is a great example, right? Like it's like you look at that card and it's like almost a card you don't want to play in a weird sense, because it's like a mana and it's not even like Lotus Petal where you can like recur it with Breach or something. Mm-hmm. But like that card can mean the difference between winning and losing, like it did in the finals match of the charity event. So overall, I would say it is a good deck to main. The other problem I would say the deck can kind of have going into tournament is that everyone and their mother is going to know what's going on. Because it's considered the best deck. I'm not personally sure if it is. I don't know how good it does against some of the things in the meta, especially things like Atraxa. But it's certainly very good, and I play it because I like to play it. I think it's fun.
Yeah, it's important to enjoy what you're playing. So
yeah, just as general advice, I would say like find a deck style, like maybe in the top 10, something like that you enjoy, and just stick with that. Try to master that deck.
Any other things you want to say? Like any shout outs, anything like that?
Oh, shout outs? Yeah, I guess my YouTube, which is kind of small. I only have like 3 videos up right now, but I'll be having more. I'll have one on this past tournament. As far as shout outs, I guess I would like to thank my mentor, Blue, for all of his assistance. And my friend Ben, who I ride with to a lot of events. Oh, I guess one more thing. I have an option now for coaching, so if anyone's interested in that, I have some coaching at like very affordable prices. So if anyone's looking for help, I can help, especially on Blue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, getting the win here shows you're obviously someone who has some advice worth following. So
I hope so.
But thank you for coming on here. Thank you for talking to us, showing some of your history and your preferences with this deck. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great talking to you.
And a special thank you to our patrons. We really could not do all this without you guys.